An engineer's mind never truly retires. It simply finds new problems to solve. At 70, my problems were smaller. Quieter, a finicky toaster, a neighbor's garage door opener, the intricate dance of circuits in the vintage radios I restored in my basement workshop. That workshop was my sanctuary, a place of order and logic, filled with the clean, metallic scent of solder and the hum of old vacuum tubes. My legacy, I used to think, wasn't in a bank account, but in the dozens of notebooks lining the shelves, filled with schematics, with ideas, with the ghosts of inventions that could have been one of them. However, was not a ghost. It was very much alive, and it was about to have a party to which I was not invited. 6 years ago, my son-in-law, David, saw one of those ghosts. He was a man with a salesman's smile and an ambition that burned hotter than my soldering iron. But he lacked the one thing. He couldn't buy an idea. He found it in my workshop, sketched out in a notebook from 1998. It was a system I called Aura, a network of smart lights that learned a person's habits, mimicking the natural progression of daylight and shifting its hue to match the mood of a room. It was elegant, intuitive, and years ahead of its time. David saw its potential not as art, but as a product. We were in this very workshop, surrounded by my life's work. He held the prototype in his hands, a simple glowing orb that shifted from a warm morning yellow to a cool afternoon blue as I adjusted a dial. His eyes had a gleam I had seen before in men who were about to make a fortune. "This is it, Arthur," he'd said, calling me by my first name, as he always did when he wanted to sound like a peer. "This is the one." The deal was sealed, not with lawyers and contracts, but with a handshake over my cluttered workbench. His promise was as bright and clear as the light from the prototype. "You'll be the founding partner. Dad, 50% equity, the brains behind the whole operation. As soon as we get funding, it's the first thing I'll do." I was a man of a different generation. A handshake was a bond. I gave him everything. The notebooks filled with years of research, the original blueprints, the patents I had filed away and nearly forgotten. I watched him walk out of my workshop with my life's best idea tucked under his arm. He founded Aura Innovations. Today, it's a company valued in the hundreds of millions. My name is not on a single share. My reward is a monthly gratitude allowance, a small, sterile transfer to my bank account that feels less like a dividend and more like hush money. The final nail in the coffin of that handshake arrived on a Saturday afternoon in early December. My daughter, Claire, and David stopped by. They didn't come for a visit, they came for a presentation. They were glowing, radiating the kind of success that comes with expensive tailoring and professional whitening. They brought with them an advance copy of the Christmas issue of Forbes magazine. "We wanted you to be the first to see it." "Dad," Claire said, her voice smooth and polished, like the cover of the magazine she handed me. I took it. My hands, calloused and familiar with the feel of tools, felt clumsy, holding something so glossy. On the cover were my daughter and son-in-law, posed in their minimalist, glass-walled living room. The headline read, "Tech's New Power Couple, David and Claire Thompson, Light Up the World." I opened to the article. 6 pages. 6 pages of professionally shot photographs and carefully crafted prose. It told a story. A beautiful, inspiring story. It told of how David and Claire, on a rainy night, huddled together in their small apartment, conceived the idea for Aura. It spoke of their shared vision, their tireless work, their creative synergy. It was a perfect narrative. My name was not mentioned once. I was not a footnote. I was not even a ghost. I had been completely erased from my own story. I finished reading and closed the magazine, placing it carefully on the coffee table. The silence in the room was heavy. It's a great story, Dad. You see, Claire said, finally breaking the silence. Her tone was that of a patient teacher explaining a simple concept to a slow child. It's about branding. It's clean, inspiring. It connects with people. David stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. The gesture was meant to be familiar, comforting. It felt like the hand of a jailer. Which is why we're having a big party on Christmas Eve, he said, his salesman's smile in full force. A launch party for the magazine issue. Really? All the investors will be there. Our board. And the journalist from Forbes. He paused, letting the importance of the event sink in. So, Dad, he continued, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper, if, and this is just a hypothetical, if any reporters happen to call you for a comment, we think it's best to keep things simple. Just say you're proud of us, that you're not really involved in the creative process. Let the story be the story. You understand? Right, it's just cleaner that way. They didn't tell me not to come to the party. They didn't have to. They had made it clear that my presence, my very existence, was a complication to their clean out, inspiring narrative. They were asking me to be a willing accomplice in my own erasure. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I had taught how to solder her first circuit board. I saw a stranger. I looked at my son-in-law, the man to whom I had gifted a kingdom. I saw a king who had forgotten the kingmaker. I understand, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a man who had just lost everything, and therefore had nothing left to lose. The true insult, the final, exquisite twist of the knife, came on the afternoon of the party. I was in my workshop, cleaning a set of old vacuum tubes, finding solace in a world that still made sense. My phone rang. It was David. His voice was not smooth or confident. It was thin, high-pitched with pure, unadulterated panic. Dad, thank God you picked up. It's a catastrophe, a total disaster. I remained silent, letting him unravel. The presentation system, the whole thing has crashed. We have this massive curved screen. We hired a production company. They made this incredible Journey of Aura video. It's the centerpiece of the whole night, and it's dead. The control system won't respond. He paused for a breath, and I could hear the frantic, muffled voices in the background. The tech team is useless. They don't know what to do. It's the control system you built for the house years ago. Dad, no one understands it but you. You're the only one who can fix this. Ah, there it was. The beautiful, terrible irony of it all. I was not good enough to be in the story, but I was the only one who could help tell it. The Forbes journalist is already here, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Everyone is waiting for this video. You have to help us. You're our only hope. He delivered the final blow without even realizing it. Please, Dad, come right away. Use the back door. It goes straight to the control room in the basement. We don't want to disturb the guests who are already here. So that was my role. The anonymous repairman. The ghost in the machine, summoned to fix the gears of the grand performance before disappearing back into the shadows. I was not a guest. I was not even a ghost. I was a tool. I let the silence hang in the air for a long moment. Long enough for him to think I might refuse. Long enough for his panic to curdle into true terror. "Arthur, Dad, are you there?" Then I spoke. My voice was calm. The calm of a still, deep lake. "All right," I said. "Give me 20 minutes, and don't let anyone else touch it." After I hung up, I did not rush. I moved with a deliberate, unhurried grace. I walked over to the old steel cabinet in the corner of my workshop, the one where I kept my most delicate instruments and my oldest secrets. I opened it. I took out my leather briefcase, the one I used to carry to my engineering job for 40 years. I began to fill it. I packed my best multimeter, a set of precision screwdrivers, and a spool of silver solder. Then I reached deeper into the cabinet. I took out a small, dusty box. Inside were a few old VHS tapes, their labels faded with age. I chose one. I also took out a stack of original blueprints for the Aura system, the ones drawn by my own hand on vellum, now yellowed and brittle. And finally, I took a small, old-fashioned microcassette recorder, the kind journalists used to use. I checked the batteries. They were still good. I placed these items carefully into the briefcase, alongside my tools. I was no longer just a father. I was no longer just a ghost. I was an engineer. On my way to a job, I was going to fix a system, but I was going to do it on my own terms. And with my own set of tools. The drive to their house was short, but it felt like a journey across a border. I left my quiet, orderly world and entered theirs. A world of manicured lawns and houses that stood a polite distance from one another, as if afraid of intimacy. I parked my old, reliable sedan down the street, away from the gleaming German and Japanese cars that lined the curb. I did not belong here, and my car knew it too. I walked up the stone pathway, not to the grand front door with its festive wreath, but around the side of the house. Following the path to the back, the sounds of the party drifted through the double-paned glass, a low murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the smooth, unobtrusive pulse of a jazz trio. It was the sound of success, a sound I had helped compose, but was not allowed to hear up close. The back door, as instructed, was unlocked. It led into a small mudroom, a transitional space between the perfect interior and the imperfect world outside. David was waiting for me there, pacing like a caged animal. He was wearing a tuxedo, but his bow tie was slightly askew, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead. The salesman's smile was gone, replaced by a mask of raw panic. "Dad, thank God," he whispered, grabbing my arm. His grip was tight. "Despérate. They're all in the living room. The journalist, the investors, everyone. They're starting to get restless." He led me not through the house, but down a narrow set of stairs into the basement. The upstairs was a stage, all warm lighting and polished surfaces. The basement was the backstage, a world of concrete floors, exposed pipes, and the quiet hum of machinery. He led me to a small, windowless room in the corner. This was the nerve center of the house, the control room for the smart system I had designed and installed for them years ago as a housewarming gift. Inside, A young man in a black polo shirt with Aura Innovations embroidered on it was staring helplessly at a bank of monitors, all displaying a cascade of error messages. "This is our top tech guy, Jason," David said dismissively. "He can't figure it out." Jason looked at me with a mixture of relief and professional embarrassment. "Sir, it's a cascading logic failure in the primary controller. The kernel seems to have panicked. I've never seen anything like it." I looked at the screens. It took me less than 10 seconds to see the problem. It was a simple software glitch. A conflict in the driver I had written years ago when they'd installed a new audio system. A rookie mistake on their part. For me, it was a 5-minute fix. I turned to David, my face a mask of grave concern. I let the silence stretch, savoring his anxiety. "It's bad, David," I said, my voice low and serious. "Worse than he thinks. The kernel hasn't just panicked, it's corrupting the data on the drive. The video file itself is probably being shredded as we speak." The color drained from David's face. "Shredded. What does that mean? Can you fix it?" "I don't know." I lied. "I'm going to have to try and bypass the core operating system, rebuild the driver from scratch, and see if I can restore the video from the memory cache before it's completely overwritten. It's delicate work. I need complete silence. No interruptions." I looked pointedly at Jason. "And I need to be alone." David nodded frantically. Of course. Of course. Jason. Out. Everyone. Out. Dad. Whatever you need." He looked at me as if I were a surgeon about to perform a heart transplant. In a way, I was. He shooed the young technician out of the room and closed the door behind them, leaving me in the cool, humming silence of the control room. I was alone. The ghost was in the machine. First, I did what was necessary. I spent exactly 3 minutes writing a small patch to fix the actual glitch. The error messages on the screens vanished, replaced by a stable, ready desktop. The system was now perfectly functional. The patient was stable. Now, the real surgery could begin. I opened my leather briefcase. I did not take out my soldering iron or my multimeter. I took out the artifacts of a forgotten history. I connected a small, portable device to the main computer. A device I had built myself for converting old media formats. One by one, I began to digitize my evidence. I slid the old VHS tape into the connected player. The grainy, flickering image of a younger me appeared on one of the monitors. I was in my old workshop. Years before this house was even a thought. I was wearing a flannel shirt. My hair was darker, and my eyes were bright with an unadulterated passion. I was holding up the first clumsy Aura prototype, explaining to the camera to my late wife, who was filming how it would change the world. I captured a 30-second clip, just the heart of it. The video quality was poor, but the truth it contained was high definition. Next, I carefully unrolled the original blueprints. The vellum was brittle, and I handled it with the reverence of a scholar handling an ancient scroll. I placed it on the flatbed scanner I had brought. I scanned it at the highest possible resolution. My name, Arthur Vance, and the date, October 1998. In my own neat, architectural handwriting in the bottom right corner, were perfectly clear. Finally, I took out the micro-cassette recorder. I pressed play. The tiny speaker crackled to life, and a voice filled the small room. David's voice, 6 years younger, buzzing with excitement and promise. "Dad, it's me. They loved it. The investors loved it. We got the funding. It's happening, I promise." "Dad, as soon as the paperwork is filed, the first thing I'm doing is registering the company. Vance and Thompson, 50-50 partners. Just like we agreed." I recorded the audio directly to the computer, cleaning up the hiss until his words were sharp and undeniable. With my materials digitized, the final stage of my work began. I was not a video editor. My plan was more elegant, more insidious than that. I was an engineer. I wrote a small, beautiful piece of code. It was a script, a digital Trojan horse, no more than a few dozen lines. It was designed to run silently in the background, a ghost within the system, waiting for its cues. I analyzed the journey of Aura video file. It was exactly what I expected: slick, corporate, and soulless. It was filled with dramatic music, sweeping shots of their glass house, and talking head interviews with David and Claire. I identified my trigger points. My script was simple. It would monitor the video's primary audio track for specific keywords. When the narrator's smooth voice said the words, it all began with a spark of an idea. My code would intercept the video feed and inject the 30-second clip from my old VHS tape. When the narrator said, "A revolutionary design that would change everything," my code would overlay the high-resolution scan of my original blueprint onto the screen for 10 seconds. My name, a silent accusation in the corner. And for the finale, as the video reached its crescendo, showing David standing triumphantly on a stage, portrayed as the lone visionary, my script would execute its final command. It would mute the video's triumphant musical score completely, and in the sudden, shocking silence, it would play the audio file of his 6-year-old promise, his own voice becoming the instrument of his downfall. I embedded the script deep into the video player's execution file, camouflaging it as a codec update. I named the digitized files with random strings of numbers and hid them in a temporary system folder that would be ignored by any casual inspection. Then, I erased all traces of my work, clearing the command history and deleting the original conversion files. After just under an hour, I was done. I leaned back in the chair. The hum of the servers, the only sound in the room. The trap was set. I stood up and mussed my hair, rubbing my eyes to make them look tired. I opened the door. David was pacing in the hallway, looking even more frantic than before. Is it done?" he asked, his voice a hopeful whisper. I nodded wearily. "It's done," I said, my voice raspy. It was worse than I thought. The kernel was a mess. I had to rebuild the core driver from scratch and patch the video file directly. It was close. It might be a little glitchy in places, but it should run. Gratitude washed over his face, so pure and overwhelming, it was almost sickening. "Dad, I don't know how to thank you. You saved us. You saved everything." He fumbled for his wallet. "Let me pay you. For your time. I held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't be ridiculous." "David," I said, my voice gentle, "you don't pay family." I packed my briefcase, my real tools alongside my hidden weapons. I let him lead me back to the mudroom, back to the service exit. He was still babbling his thanks as I stepped out into the cold night air. I walked away from the house, the muffled sounds of the party seeming distant and irrelevant. I did not look back. I was no longer the ghost in the machine. I was its creator, and I had just given it a soul filled with memory, and a perfect, cold, and calculated sense of timing. I did not go back to the party. My work was done. I went home. My house was silent. A stark contrast to the symphony of self-congratulation I knew was taking place across town. I did not turn on the television or the radio. I went down to my workshop, the sanctuary where this story had truly begun. I sat at my workbench, the place where I had first sketched the circuits for Aura on a napkin. The air was cool and smelled of solder and old paper. It was the smell of truth. I looked at the old ship's clock on the wall. Its steady ticking, the only sound in the room. 8 o'clock. 8:30. 8:45. I imagined the scene. The guests, their stomachs full of expensive food and their minds full of polite admiration. David and Claire, standing at the front of the room, bathed in the warm glow of success. I could almost hear David's voice, smooth and confident, thanking his investors, thanking his brilliant team, and, of course, thanking his beautiful, supportive wife. I was an engineer. He understood timing. The presentation, the centerpiece of the evening, was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At precisely 9 o'clock. I closed my eyes. I did not need to see it. I had designed the system. I could visualize the flow of data, the execution of commands. I imagined the lights dimming, the grand, curved screen flickering to life, the slick, corporate logo of Aura Innovations filling the frame, the triumphant, generic music beginning to swell. I imagined David's speech, the carefully rehearsed narrative of a brilliant idea born from a shared moment of inspiration. I saw him smile, a picture of humble genius, as he said, "And now, I'd like to share with you the journey of how it all began." I waited. In my mind, I saw the keyword trigger. Spark of an idea. I saw the slick corporate video stutter. I saw the screen flicker. Just for a moment. Before the image changed. The high-definition, professionally shot footage would be gone, replaced by the grainy, unstable image from a 30-year-old VHS tape of the Lozend and a Grode. There I would be, younger, in my flannel shirt, holding up a clumsy prototype, my eyes burning with a passion they would never understand. I imagined the confusion in the room, the whispers, David's smile freezing on his face, Claire's hand flying to her mouth. I imagined them thinking it was a technical glitch, a momentary error. I saw David signal frantically to the tech crew, who would be staring at their monitors in helpless confusion. The system, to them, would appear to be working perfectly. Then, the VHS clip would end as abruptly as it began. The corporate video would resume. A collective, nervous sigh of relief from the hosts. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The story had been fractured. I imagined the narrator's voice continuing, trying to smooth over the interruption. A revolutionary design that would change everything. The second trigger, this time, no flickering. The image of my original blueprint would simply fade into view, overlaying the shot of David looking thoughtfully at a whiteboard. My name, Arthur Vance, and the date, October 1998, would be there in the corner. A silent, undeniable testament. It would hold for 10 seconds an eternity in a room full of people holding their breath. The whispers would turn into murmurs. I saw the journalist from Forbes, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s, lean forward. Her professional curiosity piqued. This was no longer a product launch. This was a story. And then, the finale. The video reaching its crescendo, the music swelling, the image of David on a stage, arms outstretched. The lone visionary. And then, silence. A sudden, absolute void of sound that would be more shocking than any explosion. Into that void, a voice, David's voice, but younger, stripped of its corporate polish, crackling with the raw excitement of a promise made and broken. Vance and Thompson, 50-50 partners. Just like we agreed, the recording would end. The screen would go black, and the party would be over. My phone rang, shattering the silence in my workshop. The screen glowed with Claire's name. It was 9:07. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. Hello, Claire. There was no greeting, only a strangled, furious hiss. What did you do? I simply fixed the presentation. Claire, I said, my voice calm and even, just like your husband asked me to. You monster, she stammered, the words tumbling out in a torrent of rage and disbelief. You ruined it. You ruined everything. Our one big night, you humiliated us in front of everyone. I didn't ruin anything, I replied, still calm. I just added a few footnotes that seemed to be missing from your story. A good historian always checks his sources. Sources. This isn't about history. This is about our future. A future you were never a part of. That's where you're wrong, Claire, I said. And for the first time, a sliver of ice entered my voice. I was always a part of it. I was the first chapter. You just decided to tear the page out. I simply taped it back in. I heard a crash in the background. The sound of a glass shattering against a wall. David was shouting her name. You will regret this. Old man. She spat into the phone, her voice dripping with venom. I swear to God, you will regret this for the rest of your miserable, lonely life. The line went dead. I placed the phone back on the workbench. I did not feel regret. I did not feel triumph. I simply felt the quiet satisfaction of a complex circuit finally being closed, of a system returning to its intended state. The performance was over. Now, it was time for the fallout. The news, when it came, did not come from them. It came, as news often does, through the grapevine. The next morning, my sister called. Her son, Leo, the one I had taught to build his first crystal radio, had a friend who was working as a caterer at the party. The story he told was one of beautiful, spectacular chaos. He described the stunned silence after the audio clip played, a silence so profound you could hear the ice melting in the glasses. He described the Forbes journalist who had snapped her notebook shut and walked directly over to a pale, trembling David, her face a mask of predatory journalistic glee. He described the investors who did not make a scene. They simply stood up, one by one, placed their napkins neatly on the table, and walked out in a silent, funereal procession. The party had died, not with a bang, but with the quiet, orderly retreat of money. I thanked my sister and hung up. I felt no joy in their humiliation, only a sense of grim finality. They arrived at my house 2 days later, not in one of their expensive cars, but in a taxi. They must have known their own cars would feel like monuments to a lie. They stood on my doorstep, not as a power couple, but as two defendants arriving for their sentencing. I let them in. They stood in the middle of my small, cluttered living room, looking lost and out of place. Claire was the first to speak, her voice no longer filled with rage, but with a brittle, trembling fury. "I hope you're happy," she said, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I hope you're sitting here in your dusty little house, feeling proud of yourself. You destroyed us." "I didn't destroy anything, Claire," I said, sitting in my old armchair. "I told the truth. It seems your empire was built on a rather unstable foundation." "A foundation you gave us," David burst out, his voice cracking. He looked broken, his tailored suit hanging off him like it belonged to another man. "It was your idea. We took it and made it into something. We made you proud. How could you do this to us, to your own family?" "Family," I looked at him. Truly looked at him. For the first time in years. Was I family when you asked me to be invisible? Was I family when you asked me? Your father-in-law, the man whose brain you picked clean, to sneak in the back door and be your anonymous repairman. David flinched as if struck. "You were always jealous," Claire accused, stepping forward. Her eyes were red, but there were no tears, only fire. "You couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand to see us succeed on our own, to build something bigger than you ever could." "On your own," I almost laughed. The sound was dry and rusty in my throat. "Claire, there is not a single circuit in that entire system that wasn't born in this room, on that workbench. You didn't build something without me. You built it with me. Then you wrote me out of the story and sent me a bill for the printing." I stood up and walked over to my desk. I picked up a small, leather-bound notebook. It was one of my old ones, filled with the original Aura schematics. "This isn't about jealousy," I said, my voice quiet, but carrying the weight of years of silence. "It's about history. It's about legacy. You tried to steal mine, a man's work, his ideas. That's all he really has at the end. You tried to take that from me. Not for money, but for a story. A clean, inspiring story. Well, now you have the real story. It may not be as clean, but I assure you, it is far more inspiring." I thought they would leave then, but they just stood there, defeated, waiting. They were waiting for the final blow, for me to tell them I was suing them for the 50% I was promised, for the fortune they had built on my back. But I was an engineer. My solutions were more elegant than that. "I'm not going to sue you," I said. A flicker of hope appeared in their eyes. It was pitiful to see. Lawsuits are messy. They are about money. This was never about money. I walked over to the steel cabinet and took out a small, sealed envelope. I have, however, taken the liberty of correcting the historical record. Wait. I handed the envelope to Claire. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, officially acknowledging the transfer of the original Aura patents back to my name, a process I had quietly started months ago. Also inside was a letter from the university I had graduated from, thanking me for my generous donation of the complete Arthur Vance Aura archives, all my notebooks, blueprints, and prototypes to their School of Engineering, to be preserved for future generations of students Your company can continue to license the technology from me, I said calmly, at a very reasonable rate. Of course. But the story. The story is now mine again. It is in the public record. It is in the hands of historians and future engineers. It is permanent. You can no longer erase it. You can no longer even edit it. That was the true checkmate. I hadn't taken their money. I had taken back my name. I had taken back my truth. They could keep their hollow company, but they would forever be a footnote in the story of Arthur Vance. They left without another word. The front door closed with a quiet click. I was alone again in my silent house. I walked back to my workshop, the scent of solder and old paper welcoming me home. I picked up one of my old notebooks, flipped past the faded diagrams of aura, and found a clean, blank page. I picked up a freshly sharpened pencil, and under the warm, steady glow of a single incandescent bulb, I began to draw. A new idea was taking shape. A new story was beginning. And this one, I would tell myself, they left, leaving a silence in my house. But it was not the silence of loneliness, but the quiet of order restored. A legacy is not something you can package and sell. It is not a brand or a polished narrative. It is the calluses on your hands, the sleepless nights, the ideas recorded on yellowed paper. It is the truth of who you are. They tried to steal that, not with a gun, but with a glossy magazine article and a repeated lie. But the truth, like a well-designed circuit, always finds its way home. I didn't get the money back, nor the years I lost, but I got my name back. And in this world, sometimes, that's all a man has. Arthur's story is a reminder that the deepest betrayals can come from those we love the most. But it is also a testament to the power of truth and self-respect. What do you think of Arthur's actions? Was there another way to handle this? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel for more stories. And share this video with someone you think needs to hear it. Thank you for listening.